Hello, everyone. Before we jump into the show, I wanted to tell you about our new YouTube channel. Just head over to YouTube, search for Schmidt List, and you'll find the new channel. With an estimated 26 million Americans out of work, I'm launching a channel to help you not only find a job, but help you grow your career. I'll be doing live streams, interviews, all sorts of things. So please check it out. It's at YouTube. Just search for Schmidt List. Now on with the show.
Welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Serena and Juliet, thank you for joining me on the show today. So I wanted to jump right in to talk about SisTech and all the work you do there. But first, I would love to learn a little bit more about you and your background. So I'm going to start with Juliet. Juliet, how did you get involved in tech anyways? Did you always grow up thinking, boy, I can't work in technology, or did you trip and fall into it like most of us?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think I spent the better part of my career trying to get out of technology. It, like The Godfather, it kept sucking me back in. It did, yeah. I did my undergrad in business and ended up at a educational service agency that was just realizing that this internet thing wasn't going away. So being the youngest and the only one that understood technology, I set up all of their technology training and education department. And then I kept thinking, I'm going to try and get out of this technology thing. It has no future. And then I realized, if you know anything about technology, people will keep sucking you in. And I think if I'm looking at this 30 years later, I've done a lot of work after doing a master's in looking at human and organizational systems, doing strategic planning for organizations and regions around the world. I'm finally realizing why I have always not been able to escape technology, because I think it's one of those, it's a thinking pattern, right? So now finally to today, after all that time, I've taught technology for 10 years at the university. I served as a county commissioner for a number of years. I did a lot of change in strategic planning, and I just came back about 3 years back into the technology field. Thank goodness, not hands-on, but really in the realm of humans and trying to find the best people for companies. And yeah, so that's how I got into and got stuck in technology. It's probably a very familiar story.
Yeah, no, it really is. How about you, Serena? Did you try to fight the power, as it were, and got stuck in it, or where are you at?
So I was probably a little bit different than Juliet, where I didn't have any interest or inkling earlier on in my career. As I was sort of figuring out what I wanted to do, I didn't really have any interest in being in anything technology based. One of the first things that I actually went to school for was massage therapy, and I did that for a little bit. And then I realized that you couldn't make any money doing it without busting your ass really hard. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's very hard in the hands.
Yes, although I can still give a pretty mean massage. But I tripped and fell into a position at a startup that was doing, essentially data science and analytics back in 2005, I think this was. And I was like employee number 18, and it was one of those situations where you couldn't say that's not my job, right? So you were doing anything that you could possibly do, right? All of the hats. So I was doing marketing, and I was doing sales, and I was doing project management, and I was writing SOWs, and all of that stuff. And I sort of slowly transitioned into being more on the delivery side of the fence. And I am definitely the type of person that gets bored quickly doing the same thing. So it was really a great fit for me to be able to rotate and wear all those different hats and sort of straddle both sides of that fence. And I was there for quite a long time because it was just a great situation for me, and I really loved the people. And then it was like, okay, well, this is where I'm going to be, right? I have relationships and history and skill sets in this field and data and analytics, and I really liked it. And so I don't know that I would try to get out of it at this point, because I really do enjoy it.
Sure. Oh, that's great. Well, and so together, both of you kind of come together, put together SisTech, right? Which is the Sisterhood of Technology Professionals. And the goal, as listed on the website, is to challenge the standard quo on diversity, inclusion, and gender. So could you tell me a little bit about the inception of this movement, this conference, this support group? I mean, I'm sure it takes all shapes and forms. Could you tell me about the kind of the beginnings?
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite things to talk about. So there's actually 4 founders of SisTech. So it's myself, Juliet, we have Laura Madsen, and we also have Elizabeth Adams. We call ourselves the Masterminds of SisTech. And Laura Madsen and I, we were sort of the original people who set this up, and then realized that, if we wanted to take this thing far and make it as big as we wanted it to be, we were going to need more help. So then we brought in Juliet and Liz, because they're phenomenal ladies. But Laura and I have a history together. We worked at that small boutique consulting firm that I mentioned for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And prior to starting SisTech, she and I started a group here in Minneapolis called She Talks Data. And initially that group was sort of supposed to be this safe space for women to come and learn technology, right? It's like, okay, if you want a low pressure, safe zone to come and, understand what R is and machine learning or whatnot, it was sort of that safe space to do so. And almost immediately we realized that the conversations that women wanted to have, the conversations that we needed to be having, weren't about how to better understand and how to better use technology. The conversations were about all of the dysfunction and just, general inequality that we see in the tech, particularly in the technology space, mm-hmm. in a male-dominated field. And so that's what She Talks Data came to be. And we ended up having people who would come there and say, this isn't what you guys aren't going to talk about tech. That's not what I came here for. And it's I was like, I promise you, by the end of the evening, you're going to be really glad that you came here. And they always were, because we were talking about the things that needed to be talked about. We weren't talking about the things that everyone else was talking about. So it was, we'd bring in, speakers to share their journey. How did you get to where you were? What kind of struggles did you face? Tell us the good, bad, and the ugly. What advice would you give to other women? We would bring in other people to talk about salary negotiations and, how to present yourself on LinkedIn. We brought in an employment lawyer to talk about, here are the things that women need to watch for, and this is what you do in these kinds of situations. So very tangible things. And so SisTech was really born out of our involvement with She Talks Data. So we didn't own the She Talks Data brand, and that was sort of its own thing in its own right. And we didn't want to do anything to compete with that or break that. So She Talks Data still exists. We passed on leadership to that organization. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, that freed Laura and I up to say, okay, this is not just for women who work with data. Right. And it's not just for women, right? Let's create this group that is much broader than that is extended to allies and other areas of intersectionality, and bring that to a broader audience. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of what started SisTech. And we initially were doing an unhackathon. I did that last year, and that was where I think it's probably most similar to, if people are familiar with what an idea-a-thon would be. Yeah. So bring your ideas on or your issues that you're facing as a woman or some sort of or a minority in this space, and let's figure out how we could actually for real solve these things. So we did that last year in November. And then our plan was to host a conference here in May. And we had a lineup of speakers from all across the country, as well as someone from Canada. If you go and look at our website and see the list of our speakers, it's this absolutely beautiful mosaic of women of color and other areas of intersectionality as well. So it's just something that we're super proud of. And to round that out, so our initial intention was to have that conference in May, but we all know why that didn't happen.
Right.
And so we've now just pushed it out an entire year. So we're actually hosting that same conference in 2021. And it looks like we're able to maintain every speaker that we had originally planned for.
Awesome. So. That's cool. Well, and I want to ask Juliet, so as you were participating in this, Juliet, were there common threads? I mean, Serena just brought up things like salary negotiations, certain things. Were there common things that you were seeing were just similar issues across the board, or was there a lot of unique stories that people needed support around? What were you seeing, Juliet, as you saw this movement growing?
Yeah, what really got me was, I think at the time when I was talking to Serena and Laura about this initial idea, was that I work in the placement field. Like I place full-time and consultants as well. And I noticed out of the first 100 placements that I made 2 women placements in the IT field. And I kept wondering why. And I spent some time I have a really great network of CIOs, a lot of which are women. I asked them, what is it that you think you may have done to become a leader in tech? And, a lot of people in the CIO area really haven't looked at themselves that way. And they say, well, I don't think I did anything different. I just made my way. And they're very determined people making their way into leadership, ignoring maybe some of the things in the environment that would turn most women off, like maybe snide jokes or being underpaid or being passed over for advancement. And that as our conversations grew, and we wanted to create an environment for this conversation and for us to really go at what are those reasons why over all this time and all of this education and all of this time for women, that in tech, especially a very young sort of population that's in it, still is underrepresented incredibly by women. And so I wanted to be a part of creating that environment that makes a difference, not only for leaders. So how do we get more women into leadership in IT so there's more diversity and more opportunities for women in technology? But also, how do we create the environment behind us, hold our hand out, so to speak, and bring everyone else up with us? So it's sort of the Venn diagram there, right? How do we get more people up, and how do we create the environment without ostracizing ourselves? Because one of the things that many leaders would say in IT and women would say they had to be their own self-advocate and less of an advocate for the environment for them to get ahead, because those actions aren't often the same. The same action of trying to become a leader in a community, in a company, in a community is not the same action as changing the environment itself. And oftentimes is detrimental to becoming a leader, raising people's fur about what's going on in the environment that are holding other women out. So I was super eager to be a part of this because doesn't have all the answers. SisTech doesn't have all the answers. The environment we're creating doesn't have all the answers, but I think that we're finally addressing the things that we need to do to actually make a difference.
All right. That's amazing. And I've seen over the past few years, more and more groups focused on this effort kind of springing up. And the one challenge that I've seen, and I talk to a lot of women leaders too, is it almost seems like, to your point, SisTech isn't necessarily saying, well, we have the answers, but I feel like some people are looking for a playbook. Just tell me what to do and I'll just get it done. Going to all these meetings and things, that's fine. But I just need to get my stuff done. I mean, what do you say to people like that? You mentioned, Serena, people saying, oh, we're not going to talk about, what exactly am I going to do in this thing? What do you say to those people? How do you coach them through this process?
Yeah, for me, it's really easy to explain. And the way I put it is that for too long, we have tried to fit the mold that's been created. We have tried to work within the system that's been established, right? So you see, women, like Juliet said, like putting up with jokes that they shouldn't put up with, right? Back in the 80s, wearing shoulder pads with our our suit jackets and whatnot, right? And sort of downplaying our femininity and doing what we can to fit in with the boys club as much as possible. And that's just the wrong approach, right? We don't need to perpetuate those systems. We don't need to perpetuate those establishments. We need to change them. And that's why we have it, specifically stated in our mission is that our goal is to radically affect change in those areas. We need to challenge that status quo. We need to say, I reject that there is one path, that there is one strategy to get me from where I am to where I want to be, and realize that I can be the sum of all my parts as a woman and a mother and, someone who works with data and, someone who cares deeply about the issues going on in the world and really wanting everyone to have an equal shot at everything that they want for themselves. That for me, it was just like, I just refuse to submit myself to the idea that that's the only option. And so I and many other women that I talk to are like, yes, let's forge a new way. Yeah. Let's blaze that trail. And so when I put it like that, there's really no pushback. I've never gotten any pushback. Like no one has said, I really just enjoy contorting myself into something that I'm not.
Right.
To get where I want to be. Right. So,
and that's why, Juliet, I'm imagining you might be able to share a story of a journey or two of people who've been a part of this. I mean, what sort of change have you seen happen since the inception of SisTech and some of the people? Have you seen that empowerment happen?
Yeah, it really depends. I think one of the things that has been super empowering for people to talk about is something easy, something everyone can hear. So I'm trying not to name any names, but a good CIO of mine, friend of mine who works at a large company in town, all the arguments don't make sense unless people can see it. And where people see it in organizations is the bottom line. So the ability to say, it makes economic sense to have diversity in our company. It makes economic sense to have women at the top. Here is the proof that companies that have a large representation of women in technology and in engineering and in places that they're usually underrepresented makes economic sense. So a lot of times those stories are the ones that draw people in. But one of the things that has been interesting is I don't know if it has just been recently realized by women who are leaders in technology. They've been forging their own way for so long and contorting themselves to an environment for so long that they really didn't realize that they had the ability to change it. And they could turn around and start to change that environment, use their leadership and their voice to change the environment. So other women are attracted to it.
Right.
Not
like you
training.
said, kind of looking back and being able to help the next generation too, right?
Exactly. But not in a way that tells them how they did it. Not in a way that tells them you have to be the people that people want you to be. You have to be that woman, that person that people want you to be in a company to rise to the top. You turning around and saying, we're going to change the environment so it's attractive to all women.
Right. Yeah. And I recently had somebody on the podcast who was talking about her growth as a leader. And it sounds very similar to what you were saying, because she was talking about how all these opportunities had presented themselves, and then went on to say, as she saw opportunities, she said yes to all these different opportunities. She kept saying yes to this, yes to that. I said, well, it doesn't sound like these opportunities just presented them, like they just showed up. It sounded like you identified those opportunities and went after them. And she was like, yeah, actually, that is what happened. And so it sounds that, and the reason why I'm saying that is because it sounds like what you're talking about, where when you're talking with these successful women, that they are like, yeah, I just did the job. But if you dive a layer deeper, you can see what you're talking about is all these other extra steps and stepping stones that they probably had to take, that they just thought that's what I have to do to be a part of this club or to be a part of this thing. And what I really like about what you're doing is you're kind of bringing that stuff to light to say like, well, we don't have to, we don't have to step around those things. And it doesn't have to be just goes without saying that I put up with those jokes or things like that. Right.
Yep. And I think a lot of times you don't really even realize it. At least that's the way it was for me. I spent the early part of my career doing those same things. Like I was part of the boys club, right? I listened to my coworkers make derogatory comments about women, and I participated in that. And I looked at other women as competition, right? It's like that zero sum game where if I think in my head that there's one spot at this table for a woman, well, that's damn sure going to be me. And and so it's that mindset that just fuels that and allows that to continue. And thankfully I was able to pull my head out of my ass, not too long after that.
Well, and that's the point I'm getting to, Serena, because I can imagine that the people do have that mindset coming into maybe these organizations like the Elevate Network and SisTech and these other things and that's what I was kind of getting to is that mindset that, we're going to be better together, right? Than kind of off fighting on our own, right?
Exactly. Our hashtag is together we will. So that's exactly the angle we come at.
So if I'm a woman listening to this, what can I expect being a part of SisTech? What are some of the benefits? What would you say to somebody who's listening to this right now and thinking, well, I could be a part of something like that? What would you say to them? Like, what's the benefits that I could see being a part of this group?
It's a little of both. One, you will get tangible strategies to become a successful leader in technology. And two, you are going to become a little uncomfortable on the things that we need to face together to be able to do that. So it's that mid section of that Venn diagram. We're going to have strategies for you to become a leader and what you can do and what is successful and what environments accept in those actions and how you can move ahead. And we're going to teach you how to change the environment behind you.
Cool. Serena, same?
So yeah, I think, Juliet very much focuses on leadership because that's her world and she's so connected to that. But I would want to add that SisTech is not just for leaders, right? This is for anyone at any level. This is for the college student that is looking for a job, right? And for me, I would say that the biggest benefit is being part of that community and feeling as if you belong to a group of women who share similar thoughts, who yearn to have discussions about the same things, who are experiencing some of the same things. So we have a member forum on the SisTech website, and one of the categories is just sort of sharing stories that have happened, right? And I shared a story on behalf of someone else who didn't want their name attached to this story, but it was essentially where she put up with those. Somebody had made an off-color, actually I think it was a poster. Someone had posted some poster in a break room, and there was a guy grilling and a woman doing something very stereotypically, gender role for a woman. And it was up in the break room in a very public area. And it had some, comment bubble that said something else that was mildly offensive. And she at first was just like, I just need to put this out of my mind. It's not a big deal. I shouldn't make a stink about it. And it kept eating at her. And she finally said something to her manager, and she was met with it's not really a big deal. And then that manager went and told the person who put the poster up. And now she was in a super awkward situation because that guy knew that she had said something about it.
Right.
And so, and she's telling me the story, and she's like, obviously in hindsight, I feel like I did the right thing, but I made it awkward for myself. And she eventually ended up leaving that job. But it's sharing those, being able to share it, right? So there's therapeutic value in just sharing it and getting it out there. And then there's also huge value in reading those stories, because you are more prepared to deal with something like that when it happens to you, when you've already sort of empathized and imagined it happening to someone else.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah. A community is one. And then as Juliet said, like we bring in really tangible subjects. So the conference that we have coming up in May of 2021.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Tell me all about that.
Yeah. So conference is May 2021. Tickets are available on the SisTech website right now. So you can definitely register today. But just to give you a couple examples, we have a really wide range of speakers and topics to cover. So we are definitely going to fill that sort of traditional void of what we've seen from SisTech and then, its legacy group, She Talks Data, where we're having leaders come in and share their stories, the good, bad, and the ugly. And then we also have like a gal who's going to talk about like, how do you protect your IP in the age of the open web? Like, how can you do that? We have another gal who's going to talk about creating, like, how do you create space for crucial conversations? How do you do that? We have another gal who's going to talk about like what it feels like to be the only person of your gender, the only person of your race, or both of those things in a room at the table. What do you do? How do you advocate for yourself without being a bitch or whatever those stereotypical things that we get labeled at for advocating for ourselves. And then we've got some technical content as well, where we're going to talk about, how to be your agile best self. We have another one that's the art of data storytelling, right? And so it's just this huge gamut of topics. It's this huge gamut of women. We have Indigenous women. We have, other women of color. We have single women, we have married women. We have LGBTQ represented. I mean, it's just like, I'm so proud of this beautiful mosaic of speakers that we have put together and the content that they're going to present. So I'm super excited to deliver that to our community here.
Yeah. And I really appreciate the work you do. And I'm glad we could get the time today to talk through it so we can tell more folks about it, because I think it is important that if people don't know that there is these opportunities out there to grow and learn from other folks that are like them and have experiences that they have, I think it's really important that people just know that these are available options.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't have to go through all of this by yourself. Right. And Juliet, can I ask you, what are you excited about for the conference coming up?
I mean, there are so many things that I'm excited about, but like Serena said, it really does talk about like how to have hard conversations and also how to build your own personal brand. So what I'm most excited about is to really see what it's like when women come together really intentionally. I mean, we were really excited that this back of the bar napkin idea came alive and not only into a conference, into speakers who wanted to be a part of it and sponsors who wanted to be a part of it. So I'm most excited about what does this look like when people really do deal with it. So I'm mostly excited about the experience and the diversity of the women that are even going to be there.
That's really cool. And can I ask you one quick thing, just because it's on my mind? If you were to give some advice to somebody who's thinking about putting together a conference, maybe somebody's inspired by going to one of yours and thinks like they want to put together a very specific type of event or things like that. What have you learned in this? I mean, obviously looking at your backgrounds, neither of you have a degree in event management. What are some of the advice you'd give to somebody that's looking to start maybe their own groups?
I would say first bit of advice, don't plan your event during a pandemic. Don't do that.
Okay. That's a good one. I'll write that down.
And to be honest, I have actually planned events before, back when I was doing all the things that startup consulting firm. We did put on events there. So I have definitely not an expert at it. And I think the other thing is that you just need to have help. You can't do it alone, right? And give yourself enough time, because like whatever lead time you think you might need to put that on, give yourself like double that. Juliet, what would you say?
Yeah.
I know it's one of those things. There's a lot more details than you think there are. So Serena is our absolute rock star with the details. Make sure that you put a big team together. You can't do it on your own. You need diversity and voice in that team, and bring some good thinkers and good doers together. This idea didn't turn into a conference and a movement because we're just talkers. We are super action oriented. And I think that is what just pushed it ahead.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Well, and I'm glad you did. And I'm honored to know both of you. And I thank you for the work that you're doing. I think it's really important work. And I'm also honored that you took the time today to share with myself and my audience about everything that's going on. So let's get to the plug portion here. If I want to know more about SisTech, where should I go and what should I be looking for?
Yeah, Kurt. So actually, before I give that plug, I want to take 1 minute and talk about a specific event that we have coming up on August 6th.
Yes, let's do that.
I'm not sure what date this will be when you're listening to this podcast. Hopefully you've got enough time. But on August 6th, we are extremely proud to be able to present it's essentially an information session about a program that we're going to launch. And the program is called Recovery from White Conditioning. And obviously this is, even though equity, inclusion, diversity have been at SisTech's core from its inception, the catalyst to putting this on was the events that have been happening over the last few months around racial justice and anti-racism. And so we've just felt a deep responsibility to our mission and to our BIPOC members to do something, to take some kind of action, right? It wasn't enough for just let's just post something on our LinkedIn page. Let's just tweet something out. Let's make sure that people know that we support Black Lives Matter and racial justice and all that. Let's do something. And so we partnered with an organization that created this program. It's a programmatic approach to sort of dismantling white supremacy in our culture, in ourselves. And it's very much akin to the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. There's 12 steps. And once you complete those 12 steps, that's sort of the beginning of your journey rather than the end. And after that, it's all about being part of a community, being part of a cohort that is there to support each other and keep each other accountable as we seek to address and check those privileges and those biases that we have in each and every single one of us, each and every single day. So the session on August 6th is an information session. It's not the start of the program itself, but it's really an opportunity for people who are curious, what the heck is this about, to come and really get those details and then decide if they would like to be part of that cohort and go through it together, because it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to take a while. Yeah. And I would personally rather do it with other people than by myself. So
Juliet, this is all virtual, right?
Yep, all virtual. So we just started promoting it yesterday, and we already have 20 people signed up.
That's amazing.
So we're really excited to be putting that on. So to register for that event, to register for a conference, or to just learn more about SisTech in general, go to our website, which is sistechcon.org.
Okay.
And you'll find all of that information there.
Yeah, I'll include links in the show notes to all of those things so everybody can find that stuff. Again, thank you for the work you're both doing. I'm really excited to see where this all is going. It's just, I think the impact has already been felt, and I'm excited for the work that you're putting in going forward. So I want to thank you both for joining me today. I learned a lot. I really appreciate it.
Kurt, thank you for all your efforts and bringing this conversation to your audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you leveraging your platform in this way. So back at you.
Thank you for listening to Schmidt List. If you like this episode, you'll love our new YouTube channel. Just head to YouTube and search for Schmidt List and subscribe. We'll be doing live interviews and career coaching weekly, so I'd love to see you there. If you're interested in how my company Foundry accelerates innovation, head to foundrymakes.com to check out all the work produced by our amazing team of strategists, designers, and engineers for companies of all sizes. And one last thing. Please take a moment to leave a review on iTunes, as it helps other fantastic people like yourself find the show. Have a great week, everyone.